we would like to see prioritized from the candidates. Not only these candidates, but everybody on the school board, right? And so we came up with several different topic areas that we thought were super important for us to get to the bottom of what these candidates think and what their plans are for the future. So those topics include funding and budget. Actually, I'll have you turn to here. You guys picked up one of the pamphlets. You will see on the very inside right flat our focus for the candidates. So funding and budget, I put those two words together, evaluation and data transparency, a plan for English learners and language access, and also learning differences and accessibility. Obviously, there are lots of questions that we can ask under each of these topics that are very important. So we went through, broke down what our individual questions were, prioritized them by vote. And so the ones that you're here tonight are the top 2 or 3 with some follow-ups from each of those areas. But of course, if there's something that you want to know and you haven't heard that question be answered yet, feel free to also use the back of here to take notes, write down your question, and then use that QR code to submit it so that our audience question asker will be able to do so at the end of our formal question process. All right. So without further ado, I will let each of the candidates just give them a 30-second little elevator pitch introduction, if you will. There's a lot of information that we can find out about you online, on your websites, right? So something personable, something fun, maybe that we don't know about you from other sources, just to make sure that we feel like we know who you are. So we'll start on the other end over here and come and move ourselves this way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. Eric Doc Jones, lifelong educator. Been there my entire life, went to public school my entire life, taught, led, administrator, teacher. And the thing that I'm most passionate about is children. And my hobby, I love to play golf. That's my leisure time. So that'll give you guys some understanding about who I am. And also a musician. I play music on the side, percussion.
Buenas noches, es un placer conocerles. Me llamo Donaldo Batiste. Good evening. My name is Donaldo Batiste. I'm glad to be with you tonight. I'm currently the District 4 representative on the school board where I've served for the last 2.5 years. I was called out of retirement to take on this position as a board member, and it was during this short 2.5-year period that we were able to realize our first district-run school, a school where parents have a choice between the charter and public traditional schools. And I'm happy to be a part of that. We started something because we listened to what you said to us, and I'm here to represent your interests.
Hi, good evening. I'm Gabriela Biro. I'm running for the OPSB District 2 seat. I am a hairstylist and a mother. I come from a background of activism, and I'm running for this position because I want to be the change that I wish to see in our school system, in our district. And the fun thing about me is my leadership experience mainly comes from the dance crew community. I've been part of a couple dance crews, and the group that I was part of during COVID ceased to exist because our leader just made a decision by themselves, like, I'm ending the dance crew. So from the ashes of that, we came together as a collective and started a new dance crew as a nonprofit. I was on the board as the costume chair. So that's my fun leadership background.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Chan Tucker. Thank y'all for allowing me to be here this afternoon. I am running for District 2, Orleans Parish School Board. I'm excited to be here this evening. It would very much help if y'all supported my campaign, because for me personally, public education has transformed my life and I've benefited from it greatly. I'm qualified because I'm an engineer, I'm a public school parent, husband, I'm an executive for a Fortune 500 company, and I also have my MBA. Now, what my core goal is to bring that executive experience to the board and make sure we continue to make good decisions, not just for my kids, but for our kids as well here in Orleans Parish. So I'm excited to be here this evening. One quick fun fact about me: I grew up on a farm, so anything outdoors, fishing related, I love to fish. I can't say I'm a good fisherman, but I love to be outdoors and riding bikes and participating in the outdoors. Thank y'all.
Good evening. My name is Katrina Chantel Griffin. I'm here running for seeking the seat of Orleans Parish District 4. Very first and foremost thing, I always start off with the fact that I have two children that actually came through New Orleans Public Schools. Both graduated. So I'm here as a parent advocate first because I've had to navigate those waters in terms of being able to put my kids into different schools, as well as making sure that their needs were, and concerns were addressed. So that's the very first reason why I decided to join. The second reason is I come with a background in terms of I have an MBA, and I'm also part of a whole bunch of organizations in which that we have to collaborate, and we also do a lot of work in the community in terms of with students. So I wanted to be able to bring those things to the forefront and hopefully work to make it better for all kids, not just my children that were in school, but just all children. The other thing of which that, fun fact, too, I read too, so I like to tandem skydive, and then the other fun fact is I have a lot of fragrances. I have a fragrance addiction.
So before we get started with our actual questions, I just want to, first of all, you guys did a great job sticking to the time limit that I gave you, and that's going to come in handy a little bit later, because for every question that I ask, each person will have 2 minutes to answer that question as completely as they would like to. You can always say, I advocate the rest of my time, that's fine. If you have 2 minutes, Nate is going to be our timekeeper. Nate, can you give them a 1 minute and a 30-second? And then after that, I have the fun job of cutting you off if you get to 2 minutes and we have it wrapped up. Okay? Yep. All right.
Fingers 1 minute, fist is 30 seconds.
Fabulous. Okay. And then we're going to answer these sort of in a round. So what I think we'll do is we'll start from this end here, and you'll go first for the next question. You'll go first, and so on and so forth. Is that okay? All right, great. So let's start with our first question, and as always, we're going to get straight to the money, like people like to do. Our topic, funding and budget. Here are 2 questions. Our first one is, how do you plan to address resource disparities between schools in wealthier areas and those in historically marginalized, aka Black and brown communities? Ms. Griffin, go first.
Thank you for asking the question. So what I first started off with thinking that it's got to be something in which that it has to be a holistic approach. So I believe that we need to have school board members as well as community leaders involved, as well as policyholders. I believe that as a board member, I would advocate for additional funding for resources in under-resourced populations, as well as federal and state. I would also foster relationships with local businesses, as well as not-for-profits, and other community leaders to be able to offer additional resources, as well as offer mentorships as well.
Yeah, once again, I want to echo, thank you for the question. It's very important when it talks about funding. The key word I would say is advocacy. You have to advocate and be in position to advocate to get additional funds. There's make no mistake about it, 90% of the kids that are enrolled here in Orleans Parish, most of them come from a underfunded background or a background that doesn't necessarily have economic position and strength. One of the key aspects that I bring to the table, and as a successful qualified candidate, is my advocacy in the community to be able to get additional funds. I think everybody knows that right now it's a lot of economic pressures on families, whether it's taxes, whether it's insurance. We just recently passed a millage back this past October of last year. And so to go out and say we need to get additional dollars, that's going to be a challenge to put that on the backs of myself and, of course, all the rest of the parents at public school. How you close that gap is being able to advocate. When I was up in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, one of the things I advocated for the city there, I brought in $250,000 for the city to build a school, to build a library, to build a swimming pool, and then also revitalize the community. So I have, just due to my day job, if you will, as an executive for a Fortune 500 company, to be able to bring in additional funds through grants and through businesses in the community to whatever those disparities are in the gaps, we'll make certain that we'll have the right partnerships to close those gaps. So that's how I think about that funding opportunity is that we only have so much money available, so we got to make sure we effectively use that through partnerships within the community. And I'm the right person to make sure we get that done.
Hi, so I think the ways that we need to address the disparities between Black and Brown in our Black and Brown community is that those schools overwhelmingly have the failing charters within those areas. The people within the communities that are seeing the most wealth in inequality, they have the biggest barriers to get to our best performing schools. They don't have a lot of choice within our school system as it stands. I believe that we need to close these failing charter schools and turn them into direct run schools that fit our community needs. Go. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. We can take time. We can take a breath. It's okay.
I'm just completely blanking the question, but it is incredibly important to me because I think that those are the people that we need to look at. When we have people failing, that is unacceptable as a school district because this is the foundation of somebody's life. If somebody has failed in their foundation of the life, they're set up for failure for the entirety of their life. We need to make sure that the most marginalized students have the most resources. The people who are thriving in this system, I think they would thrive under any system because they have the means at home and the family connections that give them that support. But we need to see holistic approaches to schools. So I believe creating direct run community schools is one great way to address that problem.
Thank you. As a former superintendent of schools and having had to make budgets for schools, as a board member, it is prescribed how the monies that we get are to be spent. And those monies have to be equitably spent amongst all schools. So we don't really have any discretion in being able to give any extra to any schools unless there are monies that have been appropriated for that express purpose. For example, if there are students who are special needs students or students of English, limited English proficiency, those are areas that our board identified, and because we had some discretionary monies that we could allocate to our language learners, English language learners, and to our special needs children, we're able to collaborate with the existing charter schools, and the Orleans Parish School Board Office is now coordinating efforts to ensure that those students who need the monies the most have an extra opportunity to get that funding. But there is no trick to the trade where we can do anything outside of what is audited and legislated by the government. Thank you.
Thank you for that question as well. And I definitely agree with Dr. Baptiste as it relates to our discretionary funds. But the one thing that I want to share with our parents here tonight is that all of these separate and individual CMOs that operate, they have access to additional resources, financial resources. And the one thing that I look at that troubles me most of the time is that we don't share these resources with everybody. You hear Dr. Baptiste talks about a program that they were funding to implement services for special need kids. But they have to even ask them whether or not they want those resources. And let me tell you why. Because to whom much is given, much is required. So once I accept your offer, then I'm going to also want you to bridge partnership so I can access the resources you're getting. It is essential that we look at equitable strategies or action plans that will lead our district. And I think that's why it's so important to try to get these schools, whether they're charter or not, but to operate under the authority of the school district. The problem is the school district has no control. They have no control over operations. And I keep hearing the question about budgeting when we really don't honestly have any control over charter schools and their freedom and their flexibility. So the thought process is the idea, thank you, the idea is control versus change. If we want to talk about building budgets equitably, then we have to remove control and put change there. And we have to welcome change. And I think that's the problem right now. Thank you. First, I do want to know how, at a cough moment, I want that same space to try to process my notes.
Say that again, sir.
When I have a moment that I'm pausing, I just want that time to regain. I'm just teasing. No, I'm teasing.
I hear you.
No, but I can't see the fist. That's why I was.
No, it's all
Get naked, because I can't. I'm here and I can't see it.
Gotcha.
Okay, because I couldn't see his fist.
But you did great. You had 8 seconds left.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
You had 8 seconds.
Thank you. Thank
But
you.
also,
thank
I mean, look, we're people.
Yeah, thank you
we
so
need
much.
A second to take a breath. You need to gather your thoughts for a moment. You guys are not robots. You guys are not machines. We're here to be humans together, so we'll do that for sure. Okay, so if you guys heard anything that you have a follow-up question to, make sure you're using that QR code to go ahead and submit it, because after this next question in this section, you will have a chance to have one of your audience questions about funding and budgeting answered, okay? So if there's a follow-up question you want to ask, go ahead and use the QR code. But I'm actually going to ask a question that sort of piggybacks off of what Doc was just finishing saying, and it's about CMOs. So if you could, would you pass that mic down to Mr. Tucker? Because he's going to start us off.
Awesome.
And so our question is, what strategies is the district taking to make sure that CMOs are retaining quality teachers in New Orleans schools, particularly in under-resourced neighborhoods? Are there strategies you would like to see implemented to make sure we retain quality teachers from those CMOs?
Well, I think, that's part of my platform is that, regardless of what type of strategy you have in place, you have to have strong teacher quality. You got to have a strong pipeline of teachers that's going to come in and make sure that you can deliver the services and education to the students. So, one of the things that I want to make sure, and look, I'm not on the board today. Hopefully November the 5th I will be after I get duly elected. One of the opportunities I want to make sure is what is our current approach in retaining teachers? What practices are we currently doing? And how do we make sure we have a strong pipeline? Make no mistake, across, we have declining populations across the United States when it comes to student enrollment falling down. We have a lot of challenges, not just here in New Orleans, but nationwide. So we want to make sure that we are retaining and getting the best teachers. As my day job, one of the things I'm responsible for is making sure we have a good, strong line of engineers that's going to be able to do the things we need to do in my company. And we've had strategies of recruiting, partnering with universities, making certain we're partnering with local universities to ensure that we have the best and brightest engineers that's coming into our company to deliver outcomes. So I want to make sure that we partner with those universities and make certain that we're doing the things that we need to do to find those qualified teachers. It's one of the things, I'm also on the board of directors for Audubon Charter, and one of the things that we implemented was making certain that our teachers are paid properly, and we did a review and made sure that those teachers, so that's another opportunity to go back and look at the pay and ensure that they have the proper pay structure available.
With the many ways that the school board has its hand tied, there isn't that much that I can do day to day for our teachers, but I care deeply about our teachers. The concerns of the teachers were kind of the canary in the coal mine for me as a hairstylist, listening to people's issues, and I heard what was going on in the classroom and I was frankly shocked, and that's what made me want to run for the school board race. The things that our teachers are dealing with, they have so little autonomy in their classroom with the legislation that's coming down. It's an environment that is hostile to teaching. So getting people in is going to be difficult, and I think we really need to address the pay structure. Our teachers need to be paid a thriving living wage so that they can show up for our children and teach them the way that they deserve to be taught. If Maslow's hierarchy of needs, our basic needs need to be met first so that we can show up for other people. If our teachers are not getting the support that they need in our community, that's the main thing that's going to keep them from our school district, I believe, because they're going to be dealing with disrespect from the state level and low pay and increasing demands. So I think we need to take on all of those things, but teacher pay is one great way to do that.
As an elected member of the Orleans Parish School Board, there is only one school over which we have any authority to do anything with the dwindling teacher population. With each charter management organization having the authority to set their salaries and to hire people whom they wish, certification or no certification, the disparity will continue to grow. So my point to the families here tonight is until we diversify our teaching population and our schools in such a way that we are responsible for hiring the best and the brightest teachers where there is a shortage, of course, is to be able to do things like my opponents and my colleagues here who are seeking election to the board. That's the only way that we can touch what's happening with our teacher corps, and we don't have that access now. We do, as a current board member, only for the Leah Chase School.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely echo in Dr. Baptiste, because as a teacher myself, teaching for such a long time in the system, pay wasn't our interest at first. I want to make sure everybody understands that we were called to teach. We were servants. I loved my job. We didn't strip our creativity away. We didn't strip our innovativeness away. When we start talking about salary, because you took the very thing that we was committed to, our creativity and our innovativeness, which teaching is an art, it's a science. You robbed us of that. You put that with a bunch of paperwork, you put that with a bunch of bureaucracy, you put that with a bunch of politics. I was one of those teachers who were laid off. Laid off. 5,000 plus teachers laid off with no excuse, no reason, just laid off because of a movement. Now, if we want to talk about programmatically attracting teachers because it is an issue across this country, and we talk about putting teachers, black and brown teachers, we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, when we talk about those things, those strategies, those ways to attract, we first have to get to these universities who have removed their educational program out of the university. We must go back and build partnerships with these universities. Then we also have to get our teachers who are still there, who are still hanging on, who still have that desire, who still have that passion to say, look, I'm going to attract the very teacher, student that want to be me. That's how I got into teaching, because of teachers who taught me. So we have to be more attractive. So we have to start at middle school, junior high school, then high school, trying to bring them into a structure that we can do a teacher prep program. But we have to make teaching more sexier, more exciting, and more rewarding. And it's not always paid. We already know we get paid the less. That's just like you sending your child to me. You already know what your child's situation is. You don't have to tell me that, we know that. I don't have to remind the parent that. So we know why we do this. I'm an experienced teacher. I've done this, been there. Thank you.
So in an effort to give our audience just a couple of more seconds to ask any follow-up questions using that. John, I'm sorry. I love you for speaking up for yourself. No, go ahead.
All right, so I wanted to just go ahead and say to this, as my colleagues have said on the stage, there is a teacher shortage everywhere. So I mean, no matter the situation, it doesn't matter. There's a teacher shortage. One thing that I think that we need to do is realize that we do need great teachers in all schools. I mean, that's just important. It just needs to happen. One of the things that I think that we could do, we can look at our system-wide needs fund to look where we can incentivize, or should I say give additional pay, or make it at least competitive for teachers to be able to come into the classroom. Another thing that I think that we should do, and I'm not sure if we're doing it currently, but we should definitely celebrate teachers, teachers and students that are doing the work and getting it done. And I think that for myself, if you think about a job in which that you work for, if you continuously beat on, just continuously, and when I say beat on, I'm not saying physically, I'm saying just period. When you're never celebrated for the things that you do well, then that doesn't make you want to go to work either. So I think we need to do a better job of making sure that we're celebrating when teachers do what they are supposed to do and the students are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Another thing in terms of this, when you were talking about underprivileged, or should I say under-resourced schools and just black and brown people, I believe that we definitely need to look for ways in which that we do professional development around that. When you're offering professional development to teachers, I think that we need to look at different things that are specific to schools, to that specific school. And the last thing I think that we should have is a depository of things that are best practices, so that way it can be spread across all schools.
Okay, so still, just to give you guys a little bit more time to get those questions in case you have one in the funding and budget topic section. And also because I understand from our conversations in the Parent Empowerment Committee, the spirit of these questions. I would like to offer you guys just an additional 30 seconds, if you'd like to take it, for this pointed follow-up question. Specifically, we understand that our schools are charter-based, that each charter school has a CMO, and what we're really concerned with is how you plan to work with those CMOs or incentivize those CMOs to do the job of retaining those quality teachers that our students need, knowing that you guys do not have the oversight to do anything above their head. Do you have a strategy specifically for working with those CMOs that we know have a lot of power?
Yes, definitely. Can I answer that?
Can we send the mic?
Well, yeah, may I answer that? So you guys remember, Teach for America came into the city. It was the largest human capital in this city after Katrina. And they ended up with false narrative. They came to take veteran jobs. Actually wasn't the case. But at the time, our teachers who were removed and released were already situated in other places teaching. So you just can't boot up after you started in another district, just to boot up and say, oh, we're coming back to the schools are not open, right? But most of those teachers now that are in these schools for Teach for America are now CMOs. See, this is what people don't understand. They're now CMOs. They're not running these schools, these charter schools in New Orleans. So at the end of the day, if we're talking about building bipartisan and equitable partnership, and if they're really about the children that we're serving, both black and brown, then it's easy to bring them to the table and start navigating that conversation. But it has to be a bridge. May or may not happen. Here's the second thing. New School New Orleans. See, we can name the institutions that are supporting all of what they're supporting. Either they're going to put children first and make an investment that we can do this, or we have to do what Dr. Baptiste and all the Baptiste is saying. We have to start bringing these schools back to a direct run so we could have the autonomy and the authority and the flexibility to recruit under those guidelines.
Thank you. Good stuff. Anybody else want to take that 30 seconds specifically before we move on?
I would like to address the needs of black and brown, or constituents, black and brown constituents. You know, I'm the only white person up here. I want to address that. I'm half Mexican, but I know how racial identity can be really fraught, especially in the mestiza, system. I reject anything that is towards white supremacy in myself. I believe that none of us are free until all of us are free, and I wish to help black and brown people, especially because they are the most marginalized.
What I appreciate about your follow-up question is that that's right in my wheelhouse of the things that I've been doing within the black community for most of my professional career. As an engineer, I've always advocated for STEM education. I've always mentored students at HBCUs, the importance of STEM education. And the root of your answer is, in order to get the CMOs together, you have to find best practices and benchmarking to allow them to understand what's not being done today successfully. And we have to build upon a strategy to make sure we go execute that. I have a history of doing that. I've had success in doing that in the communities I've lived, and I've even had success being here in New Orleans for the last 6 years working for Audubon Charter. My kids, they go to Audubon Gentilly, which is an underdeserved school, and one of the successes that we've had through effective planning and effective leadership is that we've increased all academic outcomes at that school, where they were one of the highest ranked schools, and not just in the city, but also the state.
Are you taking the mic for 30 seconds?
So, just to echo what's been said, as I started off with, I do believe that the problem is that we definitely need to figure out a way in which that we can have those best practices shared. I think that that's extremely important. I think that if you are doing well at one school, if we can make those best practices, sometimes you might have to change some of those things out. But I do believe that that's the way in which to get those things done. That's the very first thing. The second thing, as I said, I just think that we're, when it's all said and done, if everybody keeps their eyes on, the most important thing, which is making sure that the kids get the education that they need and the resources are available, I think that we can all work together collaboratively get that done. And I think that we need to do that in terms of just us. It's not just the school board, but as I said, the community leaders as well as the leading policy makers as well. Everybody needs to come together to make sure that we're doing that.
Thank you. I'd like to access those 30 seconds as well. In the first meeting that I had with CEOs after having been appointed to the Orleans Parish School Board, I brought to the attention of the CEOs the same point that you're making. So I agree with your point that you're making about, I call it cross-pollination, and you're calling it making best practices more available. I was held after the meeting by individual CEOs saying, Doc, you don't seem to understand. The game plan has changed. We're competing against each other. We're not in a district-run opportunity like you all had before, where there were best practices that were exchanged and teachers visiting other schools and doing those types of things. That no longer exists with all charters.
Just to clarify, format-wise, we're going to actually hold audience questions till the end, so we will move on to the next topic. I'll share with you guys what the topic is, and then the first question is actually going to be asked by one of our other committee members, Keon. So we're going to move on to evaluation and data transparency. So data transparency and evaluation focuses on how candidates will ensure that the public has access to clear, accurate information about our school's performance, funding, and decision-making processes. Okay? Got it.
Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Keon. I'm a member of Our Voice We Listen Our Voice, as well as being a part of the Parent Empowerment Committee. And the question that I have for the candidates today is, given that New Orleans is a largely charter school district, how do you plan to balance school autonomy with the need for district oversight on data transparency?
Well, it's not just largely charters, it's all charters except for the one direct run school, which is the Leah Chase School. So as a board member, I would have control over some of the aspects of the Leah Chase School, but outside of that, as we've said many times, you know, a lot of the things are out of our hands because when we give these charter contracts, we give away autonomy. We are selling out our autonomy. We are giving this entity to a corporate person that it's like dealing with a storefront. You don't have the same governmental checks and balances that we have for accountability and transparency. So we need to, I believe, transition to a more direct run school district if we want to have accountability and transparency.
This data sharing and transparency is one of the only things that currently exists, because the data that's stored in the schools it's coming from the state, and it's made public on the state website, our district website, and I would imagine at the various school sites as well. The same thing is true for financial data. Financial data has to be shared by charters, just as district-run schools' data or financial statuses have to be shared publicly. So that aspect of it is something that's a done deal. It's already happening.
Yeah, you can't even follow that. Like, simply, it is the facts, it's the truth, and Doc, you can drop the mic on that. And because there's nothing else you can say, but that is factual from a legislative standpoint. So that's the only consistency in our school system. That is the only consistency that we can at least validate at this time. Thank you.
It happens. So one of the things I think that we should do is just foster collaboration. I believe that this should happen through regular meetings with the superintendent. I believe that we should share those CMO best practices and challenges with promote transparency across. I also believe that we should receive the data from the superintendent about the CMOs and use this information to make informed decisions about the districts that we serve. So that's what I believe that can happen. While I understand that the data might be available, I think actually having conversations about the data would probably help as well.
Yeah, you know, Ms. Keon, what I appreciate about the question is that in order, we all are public school parents, the majority of the folks in the room, and I think at the end of the day, we all want to make sure we got clear transparency in terms of how our kids are performing. making certain that the school that they're attending to, that they're solvent and valid. As what Doc said earlier, I mean, a lot of that information is already available today. Where I see an area of opportunity to, to make certain that we are being transparent, one of the key things that some of y'all may have a concern about is truancy. Well, it's not quite clear data on truancy across the city, so there is an opportunity to get more transparency with that. Truancy is is an opportunity specifically in New Orleans that can be very challenged because of the economic disadvantages that some of the families have. So that is an area of opportunity where we can be a little bit more transparent, making certain we have best practices in place, to Ms. Griffin's point earlier, and make sure we're sharing and collaborating. But for the most part, we have clear data that is available in terms of what you want to see, and from whether that's from a budget aspect or an educational aspect, that information is available.
So we're going to move on to our next question in this section about data transparency. How do you feel about the current curriculum used in New Orleans schools? And if you had a chance, how would you change it to reflect the diverse history and culture of the city and its students? It's actually down to Mr. Chuck.
Okay, would you repeat the question?
The question is, how do you feel about the current curriculum used in New Orleans schools?
There is no current curriculum in New Orleans.
And if you had the opportunity, how would you change it to reflect the diverse history and culture of the city?
Well, under the law, I can't change it because Act 91 says that anything that deals with curriculum, personnel, budgeting at the school site, the Orleans Parish School Board is hands-on. So it would be breaking the law to do anything. I could tell you what my dream would be, and that would be to have a district curriculum that any of the schools that signed up to be a charter in our district would sign off to say that they would have to first have the basic part of their curriculum to be what we're recommending it would be to address the needs of our children. But right now it would be breaking the law. And we vow when we take our oath that we will not break the law.
I would just give a part two to Dr. Baptiste in terms of that second part of your question. How, if we had the opportunity to change it, what would that look like? When you talk about law, you talk about legislature. So you talk about your state representatives, your state senators. So the same way Act 91 occurred, when they wrote that legislature to get that passed, I think if we're moving into the direction of direct run schools or neighborhood schools, we cannot limit and not even think that we don't need legislature at the table. That's how charter got here. Legislators wrote that. They got it passed. That's how charter got here. Act 91 wasn't something the school board did. Act 91 wasn't something. Act 91 is a legislative law. It's a state law. So we want to change that. And I don't know the easy way to do that, because you're talking about undoing something versus those who have the power and have already done it. I think we need to start building those bridges with, people like Dr. Wood, that I'm not afraid to mention his name, that's been a staunch supporter of bringing schools back, the senator, Jimmy Harris. So that's what we have to get. We have to bring these folk to the table, our legislatures, and see if not the board itself, because we're going back into what that could look like, us working with our legislatures to see if we can get that. But again, every charter has the right to select any curriculum as long as it's a Tier 1 curriculum.
So as Dr. Jones says, the curriculums are established and approved by the BESIC board. So I think that that's something which that people as charter members, or should I say CMOs, they can go and they can decide what charter works best for the child. In addition, I just want to say that one thing that I was looking at and I paid attention to and have been paying attention to is that our students have been performing better since COVID. So I want to make sure that we make that acknowledgement. Now, while I'm not saying that it's other things that cannot be done, I'm just saying that they have been performing better. For the last 3 years, they actually have outperformed the state So I think that that's something to be celebrated. I believe that we should celebrate the high-performing schools and the students. I also believe that we should support the CMOs and making sure that best practices are available for all schools.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, in terms of what's already been said, the schools do control the curriculum. As a public school parent, I have two boys that currently are in public school, and one of the things that I have appreciated about being in this system is the flexibility to be able to put my kids where their learning abilities needs to be met. And I think that's critically important. I have a special needs brother. He's 39 years, just turned 40 this past September. So, it's very personal to me when you start talking about school curriculum and making certain that you have the right curriculum to meet your child where they're at. Because not everybody, it's not a one size fits all. Every kid learns differently. Every kid has different challenges, and you need to make certain that there's flexibility in the curriculum to allow those students to gain and learn accordingly. So as far as, from a legislature aspect about Act 91, it is a law of the board. We have to execute what the law is, but we also have to make sure in terms of the uneven outcomes that we have in the community, why are those schools failing? Is that curriculum working? If it's not, we need to address and work with the superintendent to make sure we lift those schools up that's falling behind. As Katrina said earlier, not everything is doomy and gloomy here in addition. We have something to brag about in terms of educational outcomes. We are one of two districts in the state that has improved and almost near from the ELA back from the English language ELA for the last two years compared to other districts in the state.
As others have said, we are up against legislation that limits what we can do as far as curricula. I come from an activism background, and that education legislation is really what really drove me to run for this position. I would be somebody who would do whatever is in my power to fight against legislation that harms our students. It's not a position that is actively in charge of those things, but as a constituent, I would use my powers to go to Baton Rouge and fight for our children's rights.
The legal system. Do something. I'm sorry. I'm so frustrated. I need a break. I do. I can't deal with this conversation. Understood. We're gonna move the mic down to yes.
Dr. Jones.
Dr. Jones. Yeah. So you're gonna be the first answer right next to us. We're moving to the next topic, and the topic is about English learners and language access. And actually, one of our other community members, Maria, there you are, is going to ask that question. So let me just let you guys know what this topic is about. The English learners and language access topic focuses on ensuring that students whose first language is not English receive the support that they need to succeed academically. Maria.
Hi, my name is Maria. I'm currently a junior at Stein High. And my question is, what specific steps do you plan on taking to improve the academic performance of ESL students, like myself, Oregons, and how will you hold schools accountable for their student outcomes?
Yeah, that's a good question, and thank you for asking that question. That has been a challenge for charter schools, second language learners, as well as SPED. That's been a huge challenge, in particular because the district has no control over how these CMOs are running their schools. However, I think these groups like this who can advocate and demand access into buildings that you have a right to enter, to continue the advocacy for that. We have an opportunity with Lear Chase School, which is the first direct run school in almost 16 plus years, to be able to look at that population and see whether or not they can earmark specifically strategies and resources to directly address those needs at that school. The other thing is we need to also have second language employees, not just in the classroom, but in the cafeteria, in the custodial service, in the library. I mean, that's one of the things when we recruit teachers, we leave the aspect of our student population out. We don't even consider. We talked about that when we saw a shift in our school district, where we talked about teachers and leaders didn't reflect the students we were serving. It is the same thing happening now. It's happening now because now with the larger population of second learners, English learners, the population of personnel doesn't look like those amazing scholars. So we have to recruit, attempt to recruit, or try to provide closely adequate resources. I was impressed when Dr. Baptiste introduced himself to this audience and he was able to speak a second language. I said, wow, I wish I could have done that too. But I think also we should be able to empower our teachers to even go back and get some development in that as well, when we can't recruit that. So thank you for that question.
So I believe that the very first thing that I think we should do is advocate for quality teachers in the classroom, encouraging CMOs to offer specific professional development around EL students. I think that that's important as well. Ensuring the superintendent provides resources and support to the families and collaborate with community organizations to give additional resources. Support services to ELL families and their students. Next, I think working with the superintendent to track and report the academic performance of all students, encouraging the use of best practices, again, and strategies, and celebrating schools that have improvement. I think that that's important too. And I believe that that's a way in which that we can begin to move, or should I say, look at different differences in terms of holding the school or the district accountable as well as the CMO leaders.
Thank you for the question. I really appreciate that. And I'm not going to sugarcoat. We do a bad job with second English learners in this city. It's just we don't do a good job with that. As far as my background and approach that I would take is that, you know, me being an engineer, I love to solve problems, and I'm pretty damn good at solving problems. So first and foremost, we got to acknowledge the problem is there. Going back to the previous question that was talking about, you know, maybe a universal school curriculum, that wouldn't necessarily work in this case. We need to make certain that the culture that is at the school, that we have the right resources available, the right teachers to embody and make certain that those English, second English learners are welcome. You know, that's first and foremost we got to recognize. Well, first we got to recognize it's a problem, and second we got to build the right infrastructure in terms of teacher quality, recruiting the right teachers to help, and make certain that those English second learners are welcome. So I have a history of solving complex problems. You know, one of the advantages I have growing up in the Mississippi River Delta is that, you know, when you need 8 males and you only got 4, you got to figure out how to make those 4 work. And I feel like if you elect me on the board, I think one of the things we can do is, even though we don't have direct control of the curriculum, we can advocate and make certain those poor performing schools, we hold the board, we hold ourselves accountable, and we also hold the superintendent accountable to not keep on kicking the can down the road, but let's address it, let's put a plan in place and make certain we make an improvement on that.
I think one of the first ways that we need to address the challenges of ELL learners is having enough multilingual staff on support that can speak to them and translate, that we're not having teachers take on ad hoc roles, being like, oh, you can speak Spanish, you just do this, which I've heard from some teachers that I've spoken to. So I think that that's the main thing that we need to focus on, is having enough staff that can be communicating with our children who are coming from other communities. This is something that's very personal to me. This is one of the things that made me want to run. As I said before, my mother came from Mexico. She came as an undocumented immigrant, and a lot of my cousins were DACA recipients, and I have a lot of close personal friends who are parents who are undocumented and have children in the NOLA public school system, and I see the challenges that they face. Undocumented immigrants specifically keep their head down. They don't ask questions. They just try and go with the flow, even if they're facing serious problems. I think we need to have channels with a superintendent for direct communication with these families, because they will not come to you. You have to reach out to them. I know the realities of life as, of somebody as an immigrant, a first-generation American. I suffered a lot of difficulties in school. I dealt with truancy because I had to get myself up and take myself to school. English was not my mother's first language, so I had to sometimes communicate with my teachers on her behalf. It's very difficult. So I know the realities of being a first-generation immigrant on my mom's side.
For the first time in the nearly 20 years that we've had charter schools here in New Orleans, the New Orleans Public Schools and Orleans Parish School Board took the first step this year to centralize services for proficient English language learners and special education students. This is the first year that it's operational, starting in August when schools open. So we have taken the first step, and we worked collaboratively with our charter partners to make this happen.
All right. Thank you guys so much for answering that question. We're going to move on to the next section, and we're going to have another member of our Parent Empowerment Committee ask that question. But this topic is learning differences and accessibility. And this section focuses on ensuring that all students, including those with disabilities or unique learning needs, have equal access to quality education and appropriate support services.
Yep. Hey, how y'all doing? My name is Tiffany Julian. I'm a parent member of Our Voice for Less Dribbles. And my question is, how do you plan to address resource disparities for students with IEPs and learning differences?
Thank you so much. So the very first thing I want to talk about is we have different fundings that we can ask for in terms of it being an advocate at the state and the federal level to make sure that we get those fundings for students that are special needs as well as those services. Another thing that I think that we can do is work with the superintendent to ensure that we have accurate data on the students that have IEPs. I also think we should work with the superintendent to ensure that the students have access to the essential services as well, and then also implement a system that monitors the effectiveness of the special education services and resources that are being allocated. I think that we need to put more systems in place to make sure that that's done.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And, you know, one of the things I've been trying to invent as an engineer is a money machine. I wish we had more money to be able to address some of those disparities, but unfortunately, you know, we don't have the funds in terms of the student enrollment that we have across the district. So, you know, we need to make certain that we're using those funds accordingly to make certain we're pushing those services to the needs of the students. You know, I have a history and a track record of making sure that, you know, we budget accordingly. You know, I currently manage a $1.5 billion budget annually. And, you know, in order to do that successfully, you have to make sure you got good plans in place. You got a good opportunity to make sure that those fundings is meeting where they needs to go. As Ms. Griffin just said, you know, the funding formula for the school is something that we need to make sure that we're leveraging that accordingly to meet the needs of the students, and then also to make sure the faculty is going to be supported.
So as I said earlier, I'm a hairstylist, so a lot of what I've learned about our district comes from people who are my clients, who are getting services done, who work for the system, or are, you know, parents of children in the system. And one of them, she does disability testing, and she was saying, these charter schools love receiving the funding from the state and government, but they hate paying out what they need to do with it. They just want to hold on to that money. They don't want to give it out for services in reality. And we need to have a more direct run school system if we want to see that kind of distribution of IEP funds. A lot of charter schools are just I don't even know, I don't want to say this to disparage them completely, but I've just seen issues of impropriety. I've seen IEPs not being, you know, just fundamental failures in the school district where they're putting children in one room and just abandoning them. Like, this is not okay. We cannot be operating like this. So we need to have a full culture change to deal with this issue.
I feel the pain and the frustration that's expressed in all of the questions that you're asking. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, and I don't want to say what we cannot do, and I can tell you what the law says. But for this area and for this question in particular, charter schools have more autonomy to do with the private funding and monies that they get and can get to service their youngsters. That is not a responsibility of our board because we cannot dictate or we cannot expend district funds beyond the allocations that are made to each individual school. So I just would hope that we would be able to reframe these questions because much of the faults that you're showing and trying to place either on the elected board, each charter school has its own local board. So I'm bearing the brunt of what should be happening in the charter schools by the legislation that protects them to do what they do. So that is it in a nutshell. I share your frustration, but it's something that can be done at the local level.
Yeah.
If y'all don't have no rights, then why y'all running?
That's what I was why we have candidacy.
I said what?
Hold on. In all fairness, y'all are spot on. Question is coming up. I don't want to run over Doc's time. Pass that to him. Let him answer.
Well, I have to leave I have an 8 o'clock engagement and you all were late starting, so I will be leaving in a few minutes. This may be my last question.
That's, okay, understood. Thank you.
But I just want to say, to echo something that we all are saying as it relates to frustration, but here's where the issue at in the school. We don't have people who are certified to write IEPs or even understand IEPs. Now, see, as an educator, I know that, and especially because I'm a special educator, we used to have folk who knew how to read IEPs, who knew how to use SBLs, do SBLC. We don't have that accountability anymore. We don't. So you have folk like whoever, we're going to make you a SPED teacher. We're going to allow you. There are no SPED directors that hold them accountable in that, to understand how to write those IEPs. We've been cited more than any school district in this city or this state as relates to SPED services, and we want to ignore it. We don't understand how to do that. We have people that we make in SPED directors who have never done SPED work a day in their life. We have teachers, again, we have to. You're absolutely correct. We have to recruit. We have to make sure that we're putting the right people in there. But we have to hold these districts, these multiple school districts responsible. And I'm gonna put a charge on this amazing group here, because you guys are doing the fight. You guys are creating the movement. But we need more of you to hold these charter schools or the district accountable in terms of the lack of services that they're providing to those children. And so at the end of the day, I'm not saying we don't have any authority, but what I am saying, when we violate the law states one thing. That's why we have to become advocates of groups such as yourself and support y'all interest and y'all concern.
Can I, Crystal? I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. Say something. I'm a parent. My name is Vanessa Carpena, and I just want to say respectfully to you all, because this can't be easy at all. I don't even understand how to go about what you're doing. However, as a parent, and
y
moving here,
moviéndome
bringing
aquí,
my kids here,
teniendo mis hijos
for
aquí,
whatever reason I did,
por la razón que yo
I
lo
have
hago,
to entrust
yo tengo que
in a school
confiar
system
en el sistema
that
escolar
is
que
continuously
continuamente
failing my children.
fallando
So
a mis
forgive
hijos.
me if I'm sitting
Perdóname
here
si estoy sentada aquí
with this big imagination that you all have the power to finagle the system any way you can. Because you're at the forefront for speaking for all of us, and this is not even half or a quarter of all the parents the system is failing. So I can understand the stats. We live the stats. I don't need to know the facts. I need to know literally. You can't, don't give me 100 things you can do, but one solid thing you are putting forward to move something, whether it's an inch of the table, because you are at the forefront of speaking for us and my child. And I'm passionate about this because I have to put my child in the system. And forgive me because I understand that you're speaking to your experience, but at the end of the day, I'm not fortunate to put my child wherever I want to. And the school system here is shit comparing where I come from. And where I come from, there's also shit. And I'm really tired of excuses of like the law. We move the law. We move the legislation. We tell them what we need. If we need to formulate something in Congo Square, then we should do that. That's what I want to come here for. This is what I spend my time, not earning my money to pay my rent, to hear. And so I had to leave so that I don't come out of like disrespecting my committee, the people that I love, we're formulating something to really move through. So I can respect the work that we did the other day in organizing this, but I'm sorry, I keep hearing holistic. And I respect holistic because I come from a holistic place. I respect that. I respect your old ways of the stats. But if you're not moving something, you need to move along.
Okay, so what I'm hearing here, and Vanessa, thank you so much. Because I think, no, it's okay. It's okay with me. Hold on one second. Because what I'm hearing and what I've seen and what you can all feel in the room is a level of frustration, is a level of exasperation, it's a level of just confoundedness at what is there to do. And so I know that this question wasn't on the list, and I appreciate you for bringing it up the way that you did, but I did ask if I could insert it. And so I would like to give you guys the opportunity, because I keep hearing, we can't do it because this is the law, we can't do it because of the charter, we can't do it because of the CMOs. What role do you believe you really play in this system, and how are you going to utilize your position in that role to do the best possible job that you can with the limited ability to move that you have for our children? Because we know what the guardrails are. We can understand you guys saying that you have your hands tied, but with your hands tied, what do you think you're going to do if you get our vote?
I will piggyback that with you and say that just to give you a reminder of the insight of classroom by classroom of what our children endure. Emotional abuse.
Yes.
They endure
Yes.
segregation still.
Yes.
They endure adults telling our children that they know better and that their curiosity level isn't enough. Their innate ability to call a teacher out and say, hey, you're mistreating me. Just have that in mind. What do you bring forth? Who are you in this?
And just to add a little bit, just to make sure that we get another thing done that we need to do, as you get the mic, could you please just state once more time your full name and the district that you're running for, and then your answer to the question, what you actually think you're going to be able to accomplish in your role, given the constraints of your position. Sure, we can shoot down there.
Yes. Donaldo Batiste running. Donaldo Batiste, currently the member for District 4, Orleans Parish School Board. We began the work that I think is the answer to many of your questions by bringing back the Leah Chase School. You heard in January where the superintendent said that she didn't come here to run a school, but the board before her is who gave her the contract. We said, but you're working for this board, and we need you to do the work that we're hired to do. And we're paying you the amount of money that we're doing. You should have come with a plan in your back pocket for the day when you had to run a direct run school. When she saw the pressure was mounting and we were able to get other board members to join us in getting this position to where she was able to take back to school, the Leah Chase School opened. So I'm coming back, I'm seeking to return to the board so that we put the blueprint in place for every school that we close or we shutter, and looking at the variables that are available to us, because we know that enrollment is down and all of our buildings are not utilized to their capacity. If it's fiscally responsible for us, not to just for every charter school that loses its charter to open a direct run school, but where there are buildings that are available and children to match them. Instead of inviting new charters to come, we're directing the superintendent to bring back district-run schools. That's why I'm running for the board. That's my passion. That's what I've done for 48 years. And I feel the sensations that all of you have with the frustration and the exasperation that's going on. And I do have to leave, and I apologize.
You can bring it back down this way. It's fine. We're gonna go for it.
Can you remind me of the question?
The question is, what do you feel you'll be able to do? Why are you running? What do you feel you'll be able to actually do if you're
So I really appreciate what you brought forward. I am running because I am y'all. I am you. I'm a mother. I have a 2-year-old. And when it was July, and somebody told me that the District 2 seat was going to be, the incumbent was going to run, and I saw that as an opportunity to actually make change. I have been so mad, like y'all. I have been so mad. I've been hearing stories about awful things that have happened to children and teachers and everybody in our community, and I'm tired of it. And I saw this as an opportunity to be able to have a stake at the table and make real change. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help the most marginalized people. And you know, if I have to finagle my way, I will do that. I'm an activist, and that's where I come from.
Yeah, thank you for that question, and I definitely respect your frustration. The district has already, and I thought Dr. Baptiste would have stated that they have implemented special services this school year for all charter schools, special needs services. Now, how that worked, I don't know. But here's what I do know. When we talk about fighting special interest groups, which nobody wants to talk about, when we talk about what that looks like and why they want charters, why that you have, when you talk, Mother, in terms of what we can provide, when you talk about the person who's been on both aisles not being attacked by a national organization called DEFA, attacking me personally, I have a mother, I have sons, I have a family that have to look at that lie. And they told me, you know, they can continue to come at me. But I've been fighting for special interest groups all my life. That's a fact. And I definitely think there is options to make sure that we provide the resources that all of these children don't receive as it relates to being disrespected or being talked in a kind of way, being treated like they're inhumane. So at that point, if that means I have to continue to fight and go into those buildings, absolutely. There are a bunch of horrible stories that you guys have no clue when charters get to decide how they dismiss a student or how they remove a student from that building. Because there's no advocacy, because there's no excess of interest for parents to come into those buildings, because they get to dictate. Now the district can put in the charter contract some other stipulations. They have a right to do that before they sign that charter application. So that's one thing they need to put in place before you even authorize as a charter school district as an authorizer. They need to at least say in this.
We're gonna have to take the mic.
Just too bad.
No.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Thank you. That's okay. I get it.
I'm going to lean forward on this because I want to combine your question on why I'm running and then speak to your frustration. You know, look, make no mistake, you know, the good Lord has blessed me to be in a position I can send my kid to anywhere I so choose. Through education and through my success over the years, I've financially stable, I can send my kids anywhere. But I chose to put my kids in a socially and economically disadvantaged school because I believe in the power of education. I also believe to make certain that every kid has an opportunity to be successful just like I've been successful. How I will get that done is I'll go back to my earlier question. That's the reason why I'm running. How I will get that done is I'll go back to my earlier point. I've been advocating my whole life. I have the right connections. These business leaders in this community, they do not want a failing school. We have businesses that's coming in, getting ready to invest billions of dollars in South Louisiana. And I have a direct pipeline to those individuals. All I gotta do is just frame up what the needs are, and they will come in and help. Your frustration in terms of what's failing, I apologize and I'm sorry for that. But I guarantee you, if you put me in office, I'm gonna leverage my business connections and my good natured heart to make sure we get things done. We can't boil the ocean. There's a lot of opportunities within this community that needs to be done and corrected. But what I will do is I will direct and make sure the board is concentrated on the top 2 to 4 things that we need to do to execute to make the schools better. I have a history of doing that. I have a history of solving problems. I have a history of connecting with communities as a result of the communities where I've been living at. And your frustration that you have is going to be at the top of my priority to make certain that we get those things done. Thank you.
So I believe that, so one of the things in which that I believe is, so this is what I believe is the most important thing. I'm sorry, Katrina Chantel Griffin, and I'm running for District 4. So one of the things that I think is extremely important is advocacy. You just have to have it. It needs to be at the forefront. So you have to be able to advocate for those, not just your children, but for all children. If you are, me being a parent, like I told you, both of my children came through Orleans Parish School. If I'm coming there and I'm speaking on behalf of something for my child, I'm also speaking for the rest of the kids that are in the classroom. And there was a benefit that came with that. So just as you guys have assembled here this evening, and you guys are passionate about what's going on, you want what's best for your children, I want the same. I've had kids to come through this process, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did for my kids, which is advocate. I want to make sure that you understand that. I have all intentions on advocating for what is important. Like you said, no child should be treated in that manner. That's not what should happen at any school. No school. No school. It should not happen. And if it is, we need to make sure that those things are addressed. And the only way that we can do that is go into we have to work collaboratively together. We have to work, not just one school board member. Because keep in mind, there's no change that takes place with one of us. It has to be all 7 of us that make sure that it's taking place. So my plan is to collaborate with my other board members to make sure that these things are done. That's important.
Okay, so obviously there are a lot of new questions in the room. I have a couple. Oh, this is all? Okay. I had some questions that were already submitted through the channel that we used, but we are also at time. So 2 things are going to happen. I'm going to consider you guys sharing what you will actually do in your role in your district as part of your closing statement, because those were a great way to send you off into the audience. I'm going to read out loud 2 of the high priority audience questions that we have. And we have 15, 20 minutes that we have scheduled for you guys to be able to fellowship with the audience. I want you guys to feel comfortable to come and talk to the folks who are running for your district specifically and ask these questions that you have or hear their answers to those questions face to face. Not sitting up here in a chair, not sitting up here mic'd, but in person, one-on-one, so you can get an understanding of where they're coming from, okay? So the 2 questions that it would be great for you guys to go into the audience and be able to answer face to face include immigrant families have challenges bringing up issues that their students encounter because either there's a language and cultural barrier, EL teachers are overwhelmed with caseloads, or in worst cases, they fear retaliation. How would you as a board member ensure that schools in New Orleans are a safe space where immigrant students and families are welcome to ask questions, raise concerns, and learn about their resources? And the other question I think is very high on everybody's mind. Let me try to get it right. show your empathy towards what parents and students live day by day in schools? To this, what is your greatest commitment to improve public education in New Orleans? All these questions that were asked by the audience that were not asked out loud will be emailed to each of the candidates with their answers after a given time, compiled and shared with everyone who is on the email list from today. So if you have not signed up for that, go ahead and sign up at the front desk. Make sure that we have a way to contact you, and we'll get those written answers to you as soon as we can. But right now, I think it would be best if we had some face-to-face human time with each other so that you can share your thoughts and your feelings and your plans with the parents that are present. Thank you guys so much for your attendance today.